Hey, this is Nate Wells.
And this is Drew Cove.
Check out our podcast, that Go for Hockey podcast, for the latest news and updates on University of Minnesota hockey. You can find us on iTunes, and we're also on the Zone Coverage Podcast Network.
That's elite.
The Zone Coverage Podcast Network.
They may be drinkers, Robin, but they're also human beings.
Hell yeah, let's get Stinko.
Welcome, Giles and Goalie Podcast. I am your host, Giles Farrell. Sitting next to me is Ben Remington.
Hello.
You can find us on Twitter if you are so inclined to at Giles Farrell, at Ben Remington. Ben, did you have a nice Christmas holiday?
I did. It wasn't bad. Spent a weekend in southern Minnesota, which is probably similar to the weekend that you had.
Southern Minnesota and Iowa are very different things. Let's just put that on the record.
So yeah, no, it was good, and a lot of good time with family, which is kind of an oxymoron sometimes. But no, it was fine. It was good. A lot of good gift giving. I gave some good gifts. I got some good gifts, which is always nice. There's plenty of Christmases where one or the other or both is not the case. So yeah, pretty solid. How about yours?
It was good. Got some new jerseys, as I talked about last week with our Christmas jerseys. They were more football themed this year.
Well, that's all right.
But the gold star of it was the Larry Fitzgerald jersey. That a few weeks ago on the show, I alluded to how he was kind of the last of the players that I've really loved from when I was a kid that still plays. So I wanted to make sure that was righted before he retired, and then it became vintage.
Sure.
So
sure.
Very happy to have gotten that. Got some other good gifts. Gave Jamie's uncle some very fine alcohol that I wish I had bought for myself. But no, it was very solid and very enjoyable, very relaxing. Got to spend 4 days just kind of away from everything, and was just kind of able to decompress, which was really nice. And no hockey really during that time, so that it was even more fun than than having hockey at this point. But speaking of hockey, we can kind of dive right into the Minnesota Wild, and we're gonna have a little bit of a fun show here today. We're gonna try and have some few laughs, not so much as focus on the negatives around the Minnesota Wild, because we've really beat into that here in the last 3-4 weeks. We've declared a swoon, so we need to have a more fun and uplifting show here today.
Kick off the new year right.
Just fun. I don't know about uplifting. I don't know if we can get too much into the uplifting.
We're not miracle workers, Giles.
Yeah, we only got so much to work with, but. To review the last week for the Minnesota Wild, they only had a pair of hockey games, and they came out of the Christmas break. They had the 4-day layoff. Everyone looks like they were a little too full of Christmas turkey and eggnog. They literally looked like Clark Griswold took them out to the middle of nowhere and left them for dead, because they were roasted on Thursday night in United Center by a very hapless Blackhawks team, 5-2. The Wild did even the score in the first at 1-1, but really after that goal, Chicago scored at will, and the Wild dominated the game, but they just couldn't beat a young goaltender named Colin Delia, whatever it is. And I tweeted this before the game when I saw he was starting. I was like, prediction, the Wild are going to make this guy look like the next coming of George Vezina.
Yeah.
And they did.
Yeah. I tweeted something similar.
Weird how we thought the same thing.
I know, right?
When the goalie was announced.
It's almost like we've seen this before, and it happened again. Yeah, I mean, to your point, I don't know that they sleptwalked so bad. They looked like they had decent jump. They certainly peppered Delia. I think they ended up getting 45 shots on him or something like that, which is jaw dropping for this Wild hockey team. But something that's plagued them the whole month of December, and pretty much the cause of this swoon, I guess you could say. For once, it's not goaltending. It's not poor play necessarily from a shot metric standpoint. It was shooting percentage. They just could not finish. And that's plagued them most of this season, but it's really reared its head here in December. And I did a quick little Q&A for our friends in Chicago at Real Faxes from Uncle Dale. Yeah, they're shooting 7% in December, which is pretty awful.
That's bad.
Yeah. And, that led to the lowest amount of goals scored in December. And I'll have to run the math, and we've got one more game left here in December, but they could end up being the lowest scoring team in the NHL in December. Well, there's no shock why you would be swooning at that point, right? So, but that game I felt was more of a process game than results game, too. As much as they could not finish to save their lives, I did feel like they played a pretty decent game all around. They only allowed, 20 shots or something like that. They shot 45 shots on goal. The attempts were there. The scoring chances we felt like were there. They did have a number of your infamous failed 2-on-1s. But I felt like the process was good, and it looked like, they should have won that game if not for the finishing, and obviously the goaltending wasn't great either.
So I looked this up on Corsica as you were talking here, and at 5-on-5 this month, the month of December, the Minnesota Wild have the third worst shooting percentage at 5-on-5 in the National Hockey League.
I'm shocked there's two teams worse.
The Colorado Avalanche, 4.39.
Whoa.
And the Carolina Hurricanes, which very much makes sense, as I took in their game Saturday afternoon, and I was just floored.
They are struggling.
They need a little bit of luck. But anyway, the Wild are at 5.45, which is third worst in the league this month at shooting.
Mm-hmm.
And that is very bad, and their save percentage at 5-on-5 has rebounded a little bit, but seventh worst in the NHL this month at 5-on-5 at
not
907.
Good. Not good.
So you add all that up, and you have a month where you only win 4 games.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
And speaking of winning that elusive 4th game this month, the Wild followed up that disaster at the United Center with a game against the Central Division and Western Conference leading Winnipeg Jets. And the Wild win 3-1. Nick Seeler was out for this game, so Matt Bartkowski was called up from Iowa, and he fires the game's opening goal at 9:28 of the first period. Actually, a very nice wrist shot from the point.
Yeah.
Haven't really seen a shot like that since a certain defenseman left with injury. And then Charlie Coyle, the big omelet, scores in the second. Patrick Laine did score on a power play in the third period, but Eric Fear with an empty net goal to ice the win for Minnesota and get them off of their 5-game losing streak. And you did declare swoon is over on Twitter after the game, which...
that was a joke.
Okay, I was going to say, that's
not
premature.
official yet. It's not official yet.
I didn't... I wanted to reply, and then I don't know why I didn't, but anyway.
No, I mean, they're obviously still in a swoon if they've won one freaking game out of the last 6. So, yeah, we'll see. I mean, they have a game. The next game is Pittsburgh on Monday night, tomorrow night. Not super high hopes for that one as they tend to struggle against Pittsburgh a lot. It seems like at least. So, I don't know. We'll see. But like I said, going back to the Chicago game and then into this Winnipeg game, the process seems to be there. They're playing fairly well, and Dubnyk, for as poor as he looked in Chicago, he looked pretty solid in Winnipeg. I felt that's a team that's really tough to keep off the board, and if the one goal you allow is a Patrick Laine one-timer on the power play, so be it. So yeah, I don't know. We'll see. Swoon isn't over. That was an exaggeration joke, as I like to dial things up to 11 on the Twitters sometimes. But we'll see. I mean, you got to like where this team is headed just from a strictly playing standpoint.
We need the Twitter sarcasm font.
We do.
To rear its
Usually,
rear its
if I
head.
put anything in all caps, that's usually my sarcasm
That's
font.
it. Okay. Yeah. So
I'm channeling the idiotic drunk fan deep within the bowels of myself.
there you go. I saw somebody replied to our Twitter from our last episode asking what your beef was with Wild fans, and I really restrained to reply. I wanted to actually reply, really, how much time do you have? And then you
That's
tweeted
exactly
the exact
what I
same
said.
thing. And then the conversation just kind of went way down the line. So you answered his question pretty good, and he was I don't know, he took it very well. I was
he was
pleasantly
honestly
surprised.
curious. I don't think
Yeah.
that this was a guy who was like, accusing me of being a dick or being, which he totally could, and I'll accept that. But no, he was just genuinely curious as to why I don't enjoy going to Wild games. So I kind of laid it out for him. There's a lot of reasons, and you certainly understand all of those reasons as well, and a lot of Wild fans, a lot of hockey fans in Minnesota understand the reasons why Wild games aren't really great to attend. I just went to a Gopher hockey game last night, and even though they put up, not a stinker, they did play pretty well. They kind of ran into a goalie that stood on his head a little bit against Ferris State of all teams. But it brought me back to what's enjoyable about watching a hockey game, and shockingly, it's watching hockey. And the fans kind of being into the game and cheering at appropriate times and not being constantly pandered to. Yeah, well, that too. But I mean, there was a lot of things about it that I really enjoyed, and I was glad to do it, and glad to remind myself with that experience last night at Mariucci.
Yeah, I wish. And this isn't just Wild. I wish it was more like an American sports in general, where they took a page out of the European soccer playbook, where it's just nonstop chanting, and I mean, they make up individual chants for each players. I think the closest comparable, which isn't really comparable, is like what you see in New York from the Bleacher Creatures with the Yankees, where
Yes.
they chant out the starting nine's name in the first inning. But
Sure.
I don't know. I wish American sports would be a little more to what European soccer is like with fan interaction, because it's great, and I genuinely want to experience that. Liverpool's still on top of the league. They're up by 7 points now. This is wonderful.
Yeah, I think that there's a long way to go. I shouldn't say there's a long way. I don't see anything like that happening in American sports, just because we're so instant gratification kind of. I will say there is some creativity with American sports fans, but probably not as much as with European football fans. Part of that is the game of soccer itself kind of lends itself to, you have to kind of entertain yourself a little bit. Like there's not, I don't mean to crap on soccer, but there's a lot of, not a lot of nonstop action, whereas Americans, we're so damn ADD that, we got to have play, fun, action. And that's kind of doesn't lend itself well to,
Right.
thinking.
No, that's fair.
Not to mention our alcohol consumption, which, may or may not help your argument. I don't know.
I mean, I'd also love to have a high amount of alcohol consumption while taking in said European soccer game. But anyway, going down the rabbit hole. All right. We're going to have a little bit of fun on this podcast. Before we get to the fun stuff, just quickly looking ahead to the week for the Minnesota Wild. Monday night, New Year's Eve, 5 p.m. start against the Pittsburgh Penguins at home. If you have tickets, please note 5 p.m. start,
Yes.
not 7.
This is the first home Christmas Eve game they've had in many years, I believe, right? It was a thing for a while. I don't know. They've played Christmas Eve a lot, but they haven't been at home for it, I feel.
I'd have to look, but I
Yeah.
feel like more times than none, they've been at home on Christmas Eve.
Well,
Not
they were
Christmas
for
Eve. New Year's Eve.
New Year's Eve. Yeah, they were for quite a while. Because I went to several of those games and they were a blast. It was great, especially with the 5 o'clock start has been a constant. But I feel like they've been on the road the last probably 3 or 4 seasons almost, maybe at least 3 seasons. But yeah, no. So it's good. It's a good time. If you have tickets to that, enjoy. It's a good night. You go out and you watch a hockey game. The hockey game's done at criminy before 8 o'clock, and so there's plenty of time for libations and celebrations.
And then the Wild are off for a couple days. Then they start a 4-game road trip out east. The first of which comes on Thursday. They play at Toronto, a 1 p.m. local start.
What, on Thursday?
I'm not sure what that is.
Weird.
I know it's probably some Canadian holiday. I know there's always at least like 1 or 2 games a year in Toronto where they play like an afternoon game during the week, and I don't know why, but I'm guessing that's one of them.
January
But
3rd? Is there any
I don't know.
significance to that?
Let's have a look. But anyway, that's how they start the road trip in Toronto, and then they go to Ottawa on Saturday, a noon start in Minnesota, which again, Saturday noon starts are wonderful.
Yes.
I just realized I made an eye exam at 11. I hope I'm done in time.
You know, maybe it'll be like that episode of The Simpsons where Homer gets the laser treatment and then his eyes just crust over, and you can save yourself from having to watch the game.
Yeah, but who's going to do gifts?
Oh, well, that's a good point. That is a good point.
All right, and then those are the 3 games this week, and then the Wild go out to Montreal and Boston next week before returning home for a pretty good stretch through mid-January. So that's kind of looking ahead to the week here, and we are going to move right along into our fun little activities here. All right, Ben. The fun activities we've also kind of made this a listener question, both listener questions on our Twitter account this week. Actually, one small minor news update here for you. Matt Dumba out minimum of 3 months after a ruptured pectoralis muscle after sustaining that injury in the Calgary game a few weeks ago. So that was really the only newsworthy thing from the Wild here this past week.
Mm-hmm.
But we have covered that ad nauseum on the last couple of podcasts. So if you're kind of wondering how we feel about that, check out our couple recent shows and check out zonecoverage.com for our written work on said subject as well.
Yeah. I don't know. It's kind of helps to make things official, and know what really happened and how long it's going to be. It's kind of nice to know those things. But yeah, we've certainly made our thoughts be known on that stuff.
All right. So listener question number 1 that we had for this week was, we asked our listeners after you and myself had made a list. We asked what you think the Minnesota Wild dog name should be, as we've seen other teams in the National Hockey League adopt a dog essentially, and
to distract their fans from how crappy they are.
We have preemptively gone ahead and thought of some names for this dog when the Wild ultimately do that because they want to distract you from the fact they're in a swoon right now. So we're going to go through some names we came up with, and then we are also going to read some of your replies for names that you came up with. And I'm going to let Ben start us off with what he came up with. Or did you have one?
No, well, we had the ones that we got online, but that was...
So
I didn't come up with any additional ones.
I kind of made a list of the ones that I had come up with, and I did this at work during the week, And as I was going down the list, and then I ultimately came up with the one that we tweeted out, I kind of lost it at my desk, so I had to get up and step away for a moment because it was so hilarious. But anyway, so some of the ones that we had come up with here, we had, and this is both covering active and historical Wild players.
Yes.
Actually, we don't have any active players written down because none of them really have any great names to go with.
Not really.
With dogs, but some of the names we came up with was Our Pup,
Mm-hmm.
Our Ice,
Right.
Our Pup.
Right.
Then if we had a sidekick for Nordy, we could call it Norgie,
Mm-hmm.
Nordy and the Corgi.
Yep. He'd have to be a corgi, though, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, everybody loves a Corgi.
Right.
And then kind of digging in the historical Wild archives, we have Pierre Bark Bouchard, Ben's favorite goaltender, Nicholas Barkstrom.
Yes. Of course.
Actually, going back to Pierre Bark Bouchard, his special trick, the spinorama.
Yes.
Just chasing his tail.
Mm-hmm.
There you go. And then, I don't know why you made fun of me for coming up with this, but I had Eric Howa.
I just said you're going to make yourself sad, so that's all I said.
And then this was the one that we did tweet out, and we had a good laugh at this one because it was just, so fitting for this franchise.
Yes.
The number one name for the Minnesota Wild team dog, Cam Barker.
Yes. Yep. It's outstanding. Just outstanding. I also had a name that I threw out there when I initially tweeted out what the Wild would name their dog, and I thought it would be just number one. As in
Yes.
the retired fans number one, that you just call the dog number one. And to which, of course, you made a Star Trek joke, which is
Yeah.
on brand. So.
If you name the dog number one, I'm going to call it Riker.
That's fair. And that's fair.
You can't name the dog number one and not have me call it Riker. I'm
Right.
sorry.
It's understandable.
So after we kind of put that out there, I do want to say the best reply to the Cam Barker joke that we had was
Yes.
from our friend Brian Reynolds, who commented on our Facebook page as he replied with a photo of a dog with a traffic cone on top of its head.
A pylon, if you will.
He said preliminary design. So that was our favorite reply, but some other names that you the listeners had come up with. Our friend Tony from The Athletic,
You reeled off a few.
James Shepard.
Yes, that was pretty funny.
Let's see, Brett Marshall had. Ooh, we got a few. I'm looking at. I like Cal Clutterbark.
That's
although,
pretty solid.
yeah, just a rat dog nobody cares about.
A dog that just runs into things aimlessly.
He did also reply with Pierre Bark Bouchard.
Sure.
So credit to him for also coming up with that. And then the other one I liked that he had was Bark Parrish.
It's solid as well. Yes. You know, along those lines, you said no active players. I just thought of an active player, topical even. If he sticks around with the team, it could be Matt Bartkowski.
Nailed it.
Yes.
I want Matt Bartkowski just to stick around just so I can tweet out the GIF from The Simpsons where it's just a flashing sign that says Bart
Right.
from the episode where Homer forgets to pick up Bart. And then he's watching a documentary about Bart Starr, and it's just saying Bart, Bart, Bart. And then the dog and the baby say Bart. I've been watching a lot of classic Simpsons lately, so I've really amped up the classic Simpsons references
Nothing wrong with that.
on Twitter.com.
That's
But,
also on brand for you.
yes, checking all the boxes here.
Mhm.
Tony also had a couple more from the historical players where he had Doggy Heatley. That's essentially just a dog that doesn't move.
Uh-huh.
Jason Pominville.
Pawmanville. There you go.
And then we had Barkin Skula, and the dog just continuously falls down.
He trips over blue lines
Just
and red
trips over
lines
anything.
on the ground constantly. Yeah, I think there's any way they can go with this. I do think the Wild will probably. I mean, because this is something, and that's the funny thing, is that this is something that's totally stolen from minor league baseball, as usual. Because minor league baseball, to their credit, they've always kind of been geniuses in the promotions department because they have to be. They've had bat dogs who go out and retrieve the bats after an at bat, and several teams have them, and they've been very popular. And now, since everything dog has basically taken over the internet, it's become a thing. And I believe it was the Blues that first had a dog, and now it's very, very quickly after that, the other crappy teams, the Rangers and the Senators, realized, wow. That works great. Let's hire a dog.
Not at all surprised. Ottawa latched onto that as quickly as possible. Not surprised.
They probably got him from a shelter, too. I'm sure they didn't pay anything for that dog, but that's a different story. Yeah.
That was all the replies that we had, which was of course very, very good, very, very entertaining. If you have any other dog name suggestions, send them our way on Twitter or on Facebook. Let us know what other name ideas you have, because I think we covered some good ground here, but we're always looking for more.
Sure.
So, also, I want to go back to the St. Louis Blues who started that. The best part of that was they had a video of Doc Emmerich just sitting on the floor with the dog. And it was one of the most joyous things I've ever seen on hockey Twitter. Actually, it is probably the most joyous thing I've seen on hockey Twitter outside of the endless video loop of Ovechkin lifting the cup.
Or drinking out of it.
Correct.
Yeah.
The keg stand.
Yep.
The other listener question we had for you, which didn't... probably not as creative as the dog name idea, but because it is the new year, this is our last show of 2018, we want to know what you think of what your favorite Minnesota Wild player, coach, employee, owner should have for their New Year's resolution this year. So we did come up with a few things on our list as well. So we will take a look at that here first. I have Matt Dumba. He wants to rewrite the hockey code.
Yeah. I had Alex Stalock, who is making New Year's resolution to play the puck more.
That goal Thursday night was just horrific. Just why?
It's just like, at some point you got to be like, Al, buddy.
Yeah, let's
just stay in the blue.
Yeah.
Stay in the blue there, bud.
And then I have Charlie Coyle. He wants to finally take French lessons this next year, just so he can learn how to deny trade rumors to Montreal in French.
Well, then for his inevitable trade to Montreal, which seems to happen every season, he's going to need to learn French because they don't take too kindly to folks who don't know French around there.
No, they refuse to hire any
they're
coach who
oddly,
does not speak French.
Oddly xenophobic for one of the most progressive nations in the world.
I have Jason Zucker wants to legally change his name to Steve.
Yeah, yep. That would be a good move.
Paul Fenton's New Year's resolution, find a way to bury the Philippe Johansson pick from this past June.
My resolution for Paul Fenton was to do something. That's the joke. That's the end of the joke.
Johansson pick is doing something.
Yes, that's true. Yeah, if he could somehow,
because he has 1 point.
Yeah, I know, and I'm painfully aware.
1 point.
1 point still in 28 games?
Yeah.
Yeah.
One goal. It's like the Blackhawks team slogan. 1 goal, 1 point.
It's like
Bob
Uecker on Major League. One goddamn hit. That's all we got was one goddamn hit.
That's all he's got. 1 goddamn point.
1 goddamn point. That's all he's got. Nobody's listening anyway.
Yeah, exactly. Then I also have Nordy take out Gritty via his drum.
Yes.
The drum he uses to start the "Let's Go Wild" chants.
we all know how unabashedly violent Nordy is. I mean, you can ask, what is it, Chris Cooch?
Yeah.
You can
Tommy
ask
Hawk.
him. You can ask Tommy Hawk about how violent Nordy is.
Okay, nobody's talking about how Tommy Hawk just
Beat the
destroyed a
crap out of
fan
a
2
fan.
weeks ago.
Yeah, that was awesome.
Can we get a rematch, Nordy and Tommy?
I feel like it's like an MMA kind of like rivalry.
Rumble
where,
in the jungle.
yeah, where like there was a fight that went down, and then like the loser picked himself back up. He's working his way back up the ladder again. He's beating up fans. He's going to start beating up minor league mascots just to get another shot at the champ.
It's like Homer just working his way up the Springfield boxing circuit, only to
get
just
Jedrick
get
Tatum.
destroyed by Dredrick Tatum.
Exactly. That's where Tommy Hawk is at right now. He's climbing the ladder back up to Nordy for for Nordy Tommy Hawk 2.
Tommy Hawk will get airlifted out of Notre Dame Stadium when it comes time. And then my last one that I had written down was Ryan Suter will relearn how to lift a tractor at his home with his bad leg.
Surgically repaired ankle, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
To the Twitter, which, man, we were kind of looking for more fun things, but man, we should have tweeted this a day before because this came
Yeah.
after the Blackhawks game on
Oh,
Thursday
yeah,
night.
no,
So
that yeah.
the replies were very, very serious and very negative. So we're going to go through and try to figure this out. But let's see. Shane LeClaire says Eriksson Ek be more offensive, which they
Well,
sent him to Iowa.
Yeah,
which
he
had a
scored
pair of
twice in
goals.
Iowa
Yeah,
last night.
there
So
you
yeah,
go.
so far so good, but who knows if he'll ever do that in St. Paul.
He wants Granlund to shoot the bleeping puck more.
Fair.
Coyle to throw his damn weight around.
Also fair.
The captain needs to start playing with some more Finnish rage.
Yeah, it's something that we see out of Mikko sometimes, but
The captain needs to start playing with some more James T. Kirk rage.
yes.
Nailed it.
Yes.
And the whole team to stop missing giant open nets.
Well, that's understandable, yeah.
That's asking a lot, but they can try.
I feel like the team needs to do like the skills competition targets in the corners of the net drill. The famous
Yeah, the
Ray
Ray
Bork.
Bork.
Yeah, the Ray Bork drill. I feel like the team needs to just do like an entire practice of that. Or a shooter tutor,
There you go.
as I tweeted at the Evolving Wild folks.
Or just have Jordan Greenway lead that tutorial.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean he can actually pick a corner, but he seems like the only one.
Ben Gordon would like the Wild to draft better, leading to better player development. That probably something a little bit more we'll see better this next June when Paul Finn really has his fingers on the pulse of the draft.
I would hope so, because something that came out yesterday with Alexei Kovanov being cut from the Russian team, the Wild are sans a representative at the World Juniors this year. Which
Is that good?
That's not good. Last I checked in, and just what was it? 2 short years ago, they had three captains.
Yeah, they had like 4 captains.
They had 3 captains at the World Junior, along with 5 or 6 players, and had a really
They
good
had
showing.
like the 4. Or sorry, they had 3 captains. They had like the 4 best players as it was. There's
Basically.
Kaprizov, Cunnin, Greenway, and I forget the last one.
Don't remember either.
Was it Joel Eriksson?
It might have been Eriksson.
Yeah,
he had a
maybe.
He had a decent junior. I feel like.
Anyway,
Yeah, so that's a very fair point. I feel like all of these are maybe a little bit too on the literal side, as you mentioned, but
we provided the unliteral, and the listeners are providing the literal.
fair.
So-
Fair. If you need to be cathartic, we're here for that.
Joel Eriksson Ek from Sid to score more than 6 goals a season.
That would help.
And from our old friend Serious Mashup, Craig Leopold, embrace tanking for this year. Realize that the Parisi Suter Cup window is closed if there ever really has been one. He also did follow that up with a Happy New Year tweet from Grenoble, France,
Oh, nice.
where he also has a 6-week-old baby. So congratulations to
congrats.
him.
Awesome. Very cool. Yeah, that's
I love how he just kind of tossed that in there just to like, man, maybe I was too negative. So here's a happy tweet.
In the industry, that's called doorknobbing. So, yeah, I don't know that the Wild are going to tank, and I think anybody, we've talked about this. We talked about this, I believe, last episode we just talked about this. Sure, winning the lottery and landing Jack Hughes would be great, but let's not count on that for the future of this franchise because, as you noted, and as I 100% agree, rebuilding can be a very
tedious,
long, drawn-out process, and I think it's safe to say, with a few exceptions, I mean, the Cubs a couple of years ago, the Astros a couple of years ago, but in hockey, when has rebuilding from, burning it down, rebuilding it really, really worked as well as anyone would have hoped? You know what I mean? Like the Oilers have been trying to do it for just shy of 2 decades now, and it really, granted they've shot themselves in the foot enough anyway, but
I mean the Oilers got the generational talent.
Right.
They just done nothing with him.
I guess the Maple Leafs, if anyone, you can make an argument for the Maple Leafs having burned it down and rebuilt. But again, they got the generational talent, Austin Matthews. They got William Nylander. They made good of that, but that is an elite front office.
Yeah.
And coaching staff and all of that. I certainly wouldn't, that's the best case scenario. I certainly wouldn't expect that out of any other any other National Hockey League team, just because it doesn't work that well.
Fun little Edmonton Oilers anecdote from Saturday night that I saw on Twitter. It was tweeted out by Sportsnet reporter Gene Principe that Milan Lucic says after the Oilers game, sometimes it takes a good bleep kicking to wake you up and get you going in the right direction. And then this was quote tweeted by Bruce Arthur of I think it's of like the Globe and Mail or some in Toronto, but essentially he quote tweeted that with, "The Oilers have really field tested this principle over the past decade, so it's bound to work eventually."
Well, that's just it. Like how many bleep kickings have you gotten in this season alone?
Been a lot.
Milan, you got your coach fired for Christ's sake. That's not a wake up call. I don't know.
Yeah. So there you go. That was our New Year's resolutions for 2019, and we will move right along to our Bruce Boudreau quote of the week.
Hi, this is Bruce Boudreau. I don't see how in Toronto that they're calling it, unless it's a guy they just pulled in off the street that hasn't seen hockey before. If I were the fans, I'd be booing even more because that, they pay good money for this.
If you want it, don't just think you want it. Go out and f***ing want it.
All right, the Bruce Boudreau quote of the week comes from after Saturday's game against the Winnipeg Jets, where the head coach had apparently made it blatantly obvious on Friday in a video session with his team that they needed to get shots off more on odd man rushes, which the failed odd man rushes has prompted a Twitter GIF thread from myself to just point out how bad this team is at 2-on-1s or 3-on-2s or whatever. They're just woefully awful at it.
They're going to ruin your gimmick.
But anyway, yeah, he's trying to kill my thread. Come on, Bruce.
We're trying to make some content here, Bruce.
Right. So Boudreau said after the game on the first shoot mentality that the Wild had on Saturday during the game against the Jets, he said, quote, "Now if we can tell them to shoot anywhere other than the chest, but baby steps."
Yeah, that's a great quote. Just kind of adding some levity to a really annoying happenstance on Saturday. You noted it right away too, where the first they had two 2-on-1s immediately in the game, and both of them the shooter did shoot, which is jaw dropping and wild and crazy and fun. But both times right into the goalie's protective equipment. Like it wasn't even anything the goalie had to work for. So fair play on Bruce's part and a pretty good quote.
Bruce also did say after the game as well, he said, quote, "We didn't win the cup today, but if we can use this as a template."
That's a fair point. And I think we probably didn't talk enough about how big that win over the Jets was. That's a really good Jets team. And the Wild not only won that game, they kind of looked like they were in control for a fair amount of it. It wasn't like they got a punching Judy win. They didn't get a lucky win over the Jets. They really did kind of take it to the Jets a little bit for the second time this season, which is really shocking when you consider how that playoff series went down. So, that's a fair point, absolutely fair point on his part. Making the playoffs is going to be a whole different conversation, I feel like, and they've dug themselves a bit of a hole on that.
It's like that thinking meme. Don't have to worry about the Jets and the playoffs if you don't make the playoffs.
Exactly.
So that is your Bruce Boudreau quote of the week, and now we move right along to our Kirill Watch.
Kaprizov across for Gusev. Kaprizov shoots and he scores! He scores! The Russians are golden in South Korea.
All right, Kirill Kaprizov, checking in on him. I think he had 4 or 5 points here this past week with CSKA Moscow. Now up to 29 points, 19 goals, 10 assists in 39 games for them this season. And they've, of course, been taking part in the KHL Outdoor Classic, or whatever they call it over there.
Brought to you by Durex.
Right, with their condom ads behind the nets. I just got that they put it behind the net. There's some kind of a goalie condom-related joke that can be mashed up there. It's not the exact words aren't coming into my head, but somebody put it together.
That's fair.
Anyway, so he kind of starting to light it up again, which is good news if you're a fan of CSKA Moscow. Maybe a little more salt in the wound for Wild fans. You still have to wait another year and a half for the hope that he comes over.
Yeah.
For the hope.
The hope.
As I pointed out on Twitter this last week. You only have a year and a half just to hope that he comes over.
It's like the worst Christmas ever. A year and a half to be like, maybe they'll get him.
But he is certainly doing just fine this week. Ben, was there another prospect you wanted to highlight this week?
Sort of. So I did some live scouting of a Wild prospect last night. We talked with our friend Drew Cove about him a couple weeks ago, but I saw Jack Sadik live last night, live in person. I came away from it not overly impressed with him, but I mean, let's also keep in mind he was a 7th-round pick a couple of years ago, so there really shouldn't be a whole lot of expectations for him. From what I saw out of him, he looks like he's a relatively steady defender. He's certainly not to the Ryan Suter level of defending, and he's certainly not an offensive juggernaut like a Matt Dumba or anything like that. That's not what you're getting out of Jack Sadik if he even makes the NHL at all.
Right.
I mean, I think best case scenario for Jack Sadik is he turns out to be like a Nate Prosser type, where he's just a solid guy. He's got a little bit of size, a little bit of skill, just enough to kind of be that 6th, 7th defenseman. He's a right shot, which helps him a lot. But to my point right now for the Gophers, 17 games, 8 points for Sadik. Nothing. Nothing that's really going to blow you away. But
I was going to say, like, maybe best case scenario is he becomes like another Nick Seeler project, where it takes a couple of years for him to kind of saturate in Iowa to kind of figure it out. But
he could, and certainly I think the physical tools are there. Like he's a pretty big kid, and I didn't get to see much of his shot, but he looks like he's comfortable with the puck. He was all right handling the puck and shooting, but I just don't think there's going to be a ton of offense there. So he's probably maybe a high on the high end, maybe a Sealer type. But like I said, right shot, which is fairly important, fairly rare, so that helps him out. Believe he's a senior this year for the Gophers, so maybe we see a cameo out of him in Iowa. Maybe he cracks the Iowa roster next year. I guess we'll see.
It's hard to believe that it's already been 4 years since that great Lakeville North team that went undefeated,
right,
and had all the palings on it, and they just cleaned up that year. That's genuinely hard to believe. That's been 4 years ago already, but
right.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see if even he gets even signed to a contract. It's entirely possible with a new scouting staff looking at him that they just don't see anything, and So
and he was a
kinda see
7th
how
round
it goes.
pick,
Yeah.
so you're not
it's
really
not,
losing
you're
out
not
on
losing
much.
anything.
Yeah.
So, all right, on over to our Central Intelligence.
Central Intelligence.
Yeah, I've been scoreboard watching since opening night. So I don't know if that counts or anything, but I think hockey players are hockey players, and they want to see where they are, and they know how close everything is. They know that every game is vital.
All right, Ben, as we record, Minnesota Wild are 4 points behind the Dallas Stars for the final wild card spot in the Western Conference. Presently in the Central Division, the Winnipeg Jets lead the division with 50 points, tied with Calgary for the best point total in the West. Winnipeg having one fewer games played, so they have the tiebreaker there. But the Jets, they had won 7 of 8 before they've lost 2 of their last 2 games coming out of the holiday break. We didn't really get to see it on Saturday as I said in the post-game video, something was just kind of amiss with the Jets on Saturday. And, to the Wild's credit, they did what they had to do to get that win. They took advantage of the Jets just not having it. And then the Nashville Predators, 46 points. They've lost 5 in a row.
Oof.
They're not playing good hockey right now. They're a very impressive 14-7 at home this year, but they've only won 8 out of 18 road games, which
it's like the Wolves.
The Wolves are a different kind of a tire fire. But anyway,
I'll get to that later.
The Colorado Avalanche, who have also lost 8 of 10, coming off an overtime loss to the Chicago Blackhawks on Saturday night. Now, and as we pointed out earlier, they have the worst shooting percentage in the league at 5-on-5 in the month of December.
Crazy.
45 points. Central Division really is kind of stinking it up here. If you're not getting that from the stats we're firing off. And then you have the Dallas Stars at 43 points. They had a nice 5-1 win over the Detroit Red Wings. In light of some remarks from CEO Jim Lites, who lit up his star players on, I believe it was Thursday or Friday, one of those days. Jim Lites just absolutely taking a blowtorch to Jamie Benn and Tyler Seguin.
Yeah.
And something that really reminiscent of only one owner in sports that comes to mind, George Steinbrenner, who did this often, but basically, he had an expletive-filled rant on how Ben and Seguin have just been a huge disappointment this year. And, he's not halfway wrong, where Ben and Seguin, I think they're like 50 or 60th in the league in points scored this year so far. So not doing really well this year. But, man, what an absolute kind of a, I don't know, it's something you don't see.
No,
And
God, no.
how bad does it have to be for you to take the nuclear option and blowtorch your 2 star players?
Yeah, it really creates more questions than answers. It's like, where does this team go from here? I mean, knowing that the CEO and the owner are both livid with the top 2 highest paid players, their top 2 best players by a million miles. And then also buried at the end of that article was basically Jim Lites saying if these guys don't start playing better immediately, they're going to get their general manager fired. And it's like, well, Jesus, Jim, that's quite the statement. There's just so much to process there. And I don't know that we're ever going to get any kind of closure on that whole deal. I mean, I don't know if Jim Lites is going to get himself fired over it. I don't know if Jim Nill is going to get himself fired over it. Ben or Seguin maybe shipped out of town. I don't know if that happens, but...
Well, that's the thing. It's like, how does Jim Nill just get off of this scot-free? Because he's had 2 elite talent players for how many years now, and he's failed to put any kind of a competent team around them. But this is the exact quote from The Athletic that Jim Lites had said. They are bleeping horse bleep. I don't know how else to put it. The team was okay, but Seguin and Ben were terrible.
And this is in a press conference that he called. That's like one of the more interesting parts of it is that this wasn't, catching Jim Lights in the back of an Uber talking crap, candidly. He asked local media members to show up, to the press room explicitly so he could do this. Like that, you can't really quantify how mind-blowing this whole saga was, and it happened so quickly. But he's unseated the Ottawa Senators as the NHL's dumpster fire, which is not a small task either. Anytime you can outshine Eugene Melnyk on being a pile of crap in the NHL, that's impressive.
That's impressive.
That's really impressive.
And Jamie Benn did actually reply to this.
I did enjoy his reply, yeah.
He followed up Saturday morning, and he said, I don't play for him. I play for every player in this room and the coaching staff.
Yeah.
And then he goes on and he says, I'm proud to be a Dallas Star, proud to go out there every night and battle with these guys, put my teammates first. And then Sagan said this was a bit of a surprise, which, yeah, if I'm the best player on the team and my CEO says I've been playing like bleeping horse bleep, yeah, I'd be shocked too that came out through the media.
Yeah.
That I'm all for executives and players having a little bit more honesty, but when something that bad comes out through the media and kind of airing out dirty laundry, that cries of maybe some kind of a bigger problem that's maybe going on behind the scenes there.
Right.
So
I forget who it was. It was a national media guy, or maybe it was Lazarus. I don't remember exactly, but somebody was like, well, good luck signing another high-profile free agent ever again. If your owner and your CEO are texting each other back and forth about bleeping horse bleep this and bleeping that.
Good luck.
Good luck getting anybody else to sign there, and then you're really handicapping that poor GM that you basically already decided to fire, but you're not firing for some reason.
Right. So that's the Dallas Stars, and then the Minnesota Wild are 4 points behind them with 39. Wild also trail the Vancouver Canucks 42 points for that wild card spot.
Wow.
But they are now even with the Edmonton Oilers, who have lost 5 in a row after a pretty good start under Ken Hitchcock, but the wheels have come right off. And then you have the Chicago Blackhawks, who have leapfrogged the St. Louis Blues. They've won 2 in a row, 6 out of their last 10, 36 points, and then the St. Louis Blues at 34 points. There's your Central Division outlook for the week. And we move right along to more Chicago Blackhawks discussion in the Jersey segment.
Here to start the third period. What team is this? It's not Team USA. Well, yes, it is. They've got on new uniforms. They're wearing the logo of the Duck. I've never seen this before.
So the jersey of the week, the jersey topic of the week, I should say, is Winter Classic. As we open the new year, we always get blessed with a hockey game on January 1st. We are also always blessed to have that hockey game featuring the Chicago Blackhawks on January 1st.
Hooray.
What a time to be alive. Mm-hmm. So we're going to kind of take a look at some of our favorite and least favorite Winter Classic jerseys this year. Do you have any big thoughts on the jerseys this year? I mean, the Blackhawks are really just kind of clawing at whatever
scraping
they have
the bottom
left.
of the barrel.
Right.
Yeah, I actually kind of like the jerseys this year a little bit more than usual because they're very historic jerseys. Something I'd like to talk about this segment is I do like it when teams wear pure as possible historical jerseys, and that's what the Blackhawks are wearing, black and white, before red ever even crept its way into the Blackhawks uniforms. They're wearing very black and white uniforms that they wore almost their original jerseys. Same thing with the Bruins. They're wearing something very original. I believe it was their Stanley Cup in the 20s or something to that effect, with just the big B on it, no spokes. So I do like what the teams are doing this year. I do like it when teams go historical. In general, what I haven't really liked is the faux backs. where
Yeah.
it's
a fake throwback.
It's supposed to be a throwback, but it really doesn't. There's elements from previous jerseys, but it's not actually that close to any jersey they just wore. If you wear a throwback jersey and you change something mildly, like you change a little bit of the striping, or you change, maybe a little bit of maybe you change the font of the jersey, or a little tweak on the crest, I'm fine with that. But when you just invent a jersey and pretend like it's a jersey they wore 50 years ago when it's really not, that's what I haven't liked as far as the trends of the Winter Classic have gone. And a lot of teams have done that. They've kind of really gone out of their way to make jerseys look old when they're not really the jerseys that team ever wore. So I don't know. I do like what the Blackhawks have done. They've mostly stuck with historical jerseys. I don't think they've invented anything too crazy. I believe the Stadium Series jersey here was not anything historic, but whatever. Like, scraping the bottom of the barrel doesn't really begin to describe the Blackhawks in outdoor games at this point. So I don't know. I did like the Penguins, the first Winter Classic wore.
Yep.
Those were actually throwbacks. Those were actually
Those were
based
good.
on jersey they wore in the late 70s.
And then they used those as an alternate for a while, but
Yeah.
then a couple years later, when they had their second Winter Classic, they had the darker
Yeah.
blues with the lighter blue trim, and then
Right.
they wore that as their alternates, and that really made me mad because I really liked the kind of the baby blues that they had.
Yep.
And they should have probably just stuck with those. That was the better alternate, and I'm disappointed they went away with it, mainly because I didn't get one when they had it.
Yeah, and so I agree with that, and just and obviously the and furthermore those Navy ones were not a jersey they actually wore. They did wear Navy as their main color for a couple of seasons, but it wasn't with that logo, it wasn't with that striping at all. So it was just kind of one of those mashup throwbacks that didn't really make a lot of sense. I did like when the Capitals wore their throwbacks for the first time. That was when they started wearing their original throwbacks, which was very nice. I believe they wore the white ones against the Penguins that season where the Penguins wore Navy.
I'm not sure if you know this, but the Capitals should just bring those back permanently.
Yeah. So I don't know. There's a lot of jerseys that have been pretty decent. Some of them were just kind of like, last year's I feel like were not very inspired. The Rangers wore a jersey that said New York. The Buffalo Sabres wore basically their jerseys, but they added a little NY on their logo. If you're going to do something different, do something different. Do something actually different. And from New York, I mean, if you're going to push the whole New York thing as they played at Citi Field last year.
Liberty.
Yeah, maybe you wear a really popular jersey from the 90s that looked really good and Wayne Gretzky kind of made famous and Mike Richter actually kind of made famous, really. Maybe you pull that out of the closet. I don't know. It just seems to me like that would be one that you would want to bring back. But yeah, so I don't know. The Winter Classic to me is just kind of lost all appeal altogether. I mean, I'll flip to it in between
It's
commercials
there,
for bowl
right.
games. But I'm a big college football fan, so I realize I might be in the minority on this for hockey fans. But I'd much rather watch bowl games. Bowl games are way more entertaining than the Winter Classic is. Just kind of it's just a hockey game to me. It's not special anymore. They've diluted it so much with all these Stadium Series games and all these and the Blackhawks playing every freaking year. Like it just, who wants to watch Blackhawks and Bruins right now?
Nobody.
No.
And this is, because now we're up over, this 11th year of this, and I remember when this first started, that first Buffalo Penguins game, and I thought, this is great, this is awesome.
It was.
Outdoors in the snow, and you've got throwback jerseys on. This is magnificent. And really credit to where it's due. The NHL has done a wonderful job of making this something I could care less about. But here's the thing. The ratings are going down, and they're still, trying to grasp at straws with throwing the Chicago Blackhawks and the Boston Bruins in there. This year, they're putting it in Notre Dame Stadium.
Because that means anything to anyone.
Right. And, I mean, if you watched Saturday night's bowl game, you don't want anything to do with Notre Dame right now. It's time to start looking at just, if this ship is going to sink, put your best teams out there and let that sink the ship.
Yeah.
Like, I don't give a damn where they're from. If the Tampa Bay Lightning has been the best team in the league for the last 3 years, then put the Tampa Bay Lightning in the game.
How have they not been
Tampa
in the Winter
Bay
Classic?
against Nashville.
Yeah.
Like, how great would it be to play in Nashville 70,000 drunk Predators fans? There you go.
Yeah.
I would want to watch that.
Yeah.
The game will be good, and the atmosphere is great because Nashville is one of the best atmospheres in hockey. So is Tampa Bay.
Yeah. Great. I loved the game that I went to there.
Start expanding from the teams in the damn North who you've played in this bleeping game 5 bloody times already. Like, the Blackhawks are one of the worst teams in the league. Like, if you didn't see the writing on the wall that they are going to be this bad, why? Like, just sync with your best teams. Promote your best teams. Why don't you want to promote these teams from the South who are being really good?
Well, conversely, so to your point, they've only really ever used original 6 teams with a little bit of Penguins, Capital, a little bit of other teams sprinkled in, but every game has involved an original 6 team. For
Then
the most
rename
part,
it the Original 6 Classic.
right. But so I know they have the Heritage Classic in Canada, and that's kind of like Canada's game, whatever. But how great would the Winter Classic be next year if it was Oilers Maple Leafs? I mean,
Yeah, I'd want to watch that.
Yeah, exactly. Like that's not I maybe you're infringing on the Heritage Classic. Maybe they don't want to do that. But if you're gonna pretend like the Winter Classic is your marquee regular season game of the season, which they do pretend like that, they do make that seem like that's the case. Why not have marquee teams in it? And Boston's good. That's fine. I mean, they've played the Winter Classic 18 times, as have the Blackhawks. I get where they're going for here. You've got 2 very Irish towns going at it at Notre Dame Stadium. I understand what they were going for, but again, as you mentioned, not just Southern teams. Feature your Southern teams. Feature your Northern
Feature
teams.
the good teams.
Feature your talent. Feature your Connor McDavids. Feature your Austin Matthews. Your Steven Stamkos. Your
Calgary.
Yeah, I mean,
Johnny Gaudreau.
Right. Just go out of your way to make these guys household names because you haven't done a good job of doing that. You force Patrick Kane down our throats for well over a decade now, no pun intended, and we get it. We get it. Patrick Kane's American. He's talented. We get it. That ship is kind of sailing, and so it's time to turn the page. It's time to make some of these kids that are under 23 years old and still really, really freaking good, time to make them the face of the league. Why Connor McDavid isn't in almost every NHL advertisement that's rolling right now, I don't know. I don't understand why I get that he's kind of a goofy kid. He maybe he isn't super awkward. So is Patrick Kane. Patrick Kane is terrible. He's not a good actor. He's not an especially charming individual, obviously.
Why isn't PK Subban prominently featured in more commercials?
Exactly.
He is charismatic, and he is very good.
He's in the one Bridgestone commercial, and that's it.
Get him in more.
Which is more than we can say for Connor McDavid or Austin Matthews, which,
Get them in more.
Yeah, just feature your talent. And so, I don't know. That's my whole thing on the Winter Classic. And I like the throwbacks. One thing that I kind of miss, they did this at the Stadium Series for the North Stars game. The North Stars players wore brown gloves and equipment. I would like to see that. I mean, if the Blackhawks are going to wear jerseys that they wore in the 1920s and the Bruins are wearing jerseys they wore in the 1920s, maybe make it look historically accurate. That'd be kind of cool,
Have the gear look like what they did
Give
then.
them the leather brown helmets. Give them the brown gloves. I mean, this is 2018. We have the technology. I don't know. I would like to see that. I mean, go full bore.
Go nuts.
Yeah, don't half-ass the period piece that you're going for with these jerseys.
To quote Ron Swanson, never half-ass 2 things, whole-ass 1 thing.
Exactly. Yeah, if you're not going to feature your talent, at least full-ass the look of the game.
Right. Well, there you go. That can probably do it for us. I think we've vented about the Winter Classic many
every
times
season.
previous on this podcast, so nothing new for our loyal listeners. But that'll do it for us this week. You can follow Ben and I on Twitter at Ben Remington, at Giles Farrell, We will ring in the new year with some hashtag content this week, most likely, on zonecoverage.com, at zonecouragemn on Twitter. And you can follow the podcast on Twitter at GATGWildPodcast. We have a Facebook, facebook.com/GATGWildPodcast, SoundCloud, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Google Play, iTunes. You can find us all there for your listening pleasure. And yeah, that can do it for us this week, and we will be back with you in 2019.
Later.
It's not resiliency. You're making it sound like we're good. That's all. I'm done.